Okay. All right, let's wait a minute before we get started.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Misty, I'll let you introduce Saima then.
Okay. Okay, um, so excited for this talk today. Saima is going to be doing her job market talk, and it is about a topic I am very interested in. And I hope that you are all interested in it as well. And I will tell you what it is in a second. Donna, maybe I should have had you do it anyway. So I'm almost there. Here it is. Great. Okay. So Saima's going to be talking to, so she is a PhD candidate in economics at KU, specializing in applied microeconomics, and has a focus on gender and labor economics. And her paper that she's going to be talking about today works or discusses developing a household bargaining model to explore the influence of relative earnings of parents on childcare expenditure decisions. So this is a very interesting topic that kind of tries to think about the ways in which families make investments in external childcare based on decision-making and power within the home. So super exciting. And with that, Saima, I will let you take over the reins. I assume you chatted with Anna and you guys have the screen share and everything up and about. The other thing that I will mention before Saima gets started is Monday, December 4th, we have Nancy Fulbray will be in the seminar presenting some of her latest work. So I hope that you all can make it for that, that talk. That should be very exciting. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. I'll start sharing my slide. So everyone is able to see my slides. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Saima Alam Samantha, PhD candidate in Department of Economics, and here my job market paper, the title is Women's Relative Income and Bargaining Power, an Analysis of Childcare Expenditure in Household. So in this paper, I analyze how women's economic status and bargaining position within family influenced the decision on the childcare expenditure, and I define my childcare expenditure as a mother's private good in this study. I adopt a household collective bargaining approach based on Browning et al. In 1994 to model the household expenditure that depend on relative income of the spouses in heterosexual marriages. And I argue that mothers have different preferences and weights on their utility function and from their husband when it comes to childcare spending, and that this reflects the unequal distribution of power and responsibility within the family. So there is an increasing trend of women's labor force participation and household numbers where wives earn more than their husband gives us a different power dynamic within the household. So there is a study done by Pew Research Center. They analyzed the data of CPA's ASIC data, and they show that the growing share of US marriages where husband and wife are almost about the same. Like in 29% of the heterosexual marriages, men and women earn the same amount of money, approximately $60,000. And in 16% of the marriages, wife earn more than their husband in 16% of the marriages. This is a significant shift from half a century when 85% of the marriages had husband as the main income source. Now, as increasingly you can see, women have more resources concentrated to them. The question actually arises how household consumption situation change according to this shift. So there is several household bargaining model argue that household consumption decisions depend on who has more control over resources. This is actually contrast to it's a contrast analysis to the pooled income hypothesis, where they say that household consumption decisions do not depend on who has more control over resources, and this is something says that it does depend. So there are some bargaining model given by Landberg and Pollack. They say that the spouse with more income or asset is expected to focus on the market work, while the other spouse should take care of the home production. However, this logic actually does not always apply, especially when we consider a gender differences. The social norm and expectation actually plays a significant part in shaping the role of gender in the family. Now, there is a phenomenon which is highly driven by gender norm, which is called gender deviance neutralization, which has been talked about in many literature, which says that when women make more money than men or tend to earn the same amount of money in their household as men, the couple try to make it seem normal by doing more traditional things at home, like housework. Like how wife do more and husband do less housework when wife out earn their husband. And this effect is sufficiently strong that the spousal gender housework hours will be an U shape in wife's relative income. So this phenomenon has been tried to examine by this study by Sir Daji in 2022, where she tried to see that how wife's housework and hours change over the time when wife's relative income change. So here's a side-by-side comparison. As you can see, that we can see that in the vertical axis we plot wife's housework hours, and in the horizontal we see that wife's relative income, and here we see that husband's housework hours in the vertical axis. As you can see that the figure has a very different vertical axis scale for husband and wife, because already wives tend to do significantly more housework on an average. As you can see, when the relative income is increasing, wives are doing much of the housework, and as it is increasing, they tend to decrease their housework, and husbands are taking more duty. But when it goes to close to their earning as much as their husbands, this housework amount, we see that there is a sudden increase in the wife's housework hour, and that is husbands are decreasing, their housework hours are decreasing. So it seems that it shows that when wife's relative earning increases, how husbands tend to do less housework. So as you can see that caregiving responsibility and childcare expenditure disproportionately affect female labor force participation. So in this context, I want to examine how childcare expenditure reflect this unequal burden on women who still work more hours than men, according to this data we just saw. So as you can see that childcare expenses are an increasingly significant factor in the family budget and decision-making process. So, and there is a study, it can be seen that 13 million children aged 0 to 5 regularly attend non-parental care, which account for 60% of this age group. So it will be intriguing to explore how these mothers negotiate outsourcing their childcare responsibility, especially when they earn more than their husband. Now, I'm going to talk about how my study connect the distinct areas of the existing literature. So the first thing that my model connect is the literature that talk about bargaining model to explain the resource allocation in the household. like there are several bargaining models given by McIlroy and Horney and Manson Brown. They talk about cooperative framework when they define a threat point in the decision process, which comes from the outside of the marriage. And also in the Lundberg and Pollack model, they talk about a non-cooperative game, where the threat point is the non-cooperative game. And there is my model is originally based on a collective bargaining model given by Chiapuri in 1988 and 1992, which talks about assume that each household member has their own utility function and their private consumption related to, and the optimum output is a pair to efficient allocation. And there are several model that has been seen in the literature which are based on the collective bargaining model, which actually consider the child care and children consumption into their model. So here is a paper by Bergen and Dhoni and Blundell, and they show that how the private consumption in a family depends on their expenditure on the child care or children-related consumption. Also, there are several papers by like Van Claveren and Giesel and Popri and Curie. They show that the husband and wife's labor supply decision, how it depends on the time they spend on the children or the existence of the preschool age children in the household. Or it also depends on how the child care price change. Also, there are several models which include in the collective bargaining model which include children as an individual consumer. And there is a study by Dolphin et al. They see that children also have bargaining power. That is, they included children aged from 16 to 21, and they give them some. They see that they have some decision-making power, and their bargaining power highly dependent on their gender. Now, there is another strand of literature that is related to my study, which talks about the empirical studies investigating the distribution of resources within the household. Like Ginther and Stadrom in their 2010 study, they see that effect of marriage that have an earning premium for male and an income penalty for women. Where Moret-Close and Segenes, they see that women tend to underreport their income if they earn higher income higher than their husband. Also, Barton et al. Saw that if women are earning more than their husband, it lowered the marriage rate. Also, married women tend to drop more from their labor force if they out-earn their husband. And also, there are several literature which sees that if the mother have more control over the resources, and those households tend to spend more money towards the children-related consumption. Now, my study contributed to this existing literature primarily two ways. First, unlike the existing literature that treats the childcare expenditure as a public good, I define childcare expenditure is a private good expenditure for mother. And moreover, I separate the child daycare expenditure from the other child-related consumption expenditure to analyze how caregiving is differently valued among the husband and wife. Also, gender norm is more evident in developing country, but in this study, I test my hypothesis with the US data, with the two sources of data, that is Consumer Expenditure Survey and PSID, to examine how wise bargaining power affect the childcare spending of heterosexual couples. So now I'm going to briefly talk about the theoretical model that I have used in this study. So I adopt a household collective bargaining approach based on Browning, Burgoyne, and Chiapuri and Leichen to model the household expenditure depending on the relative income of the spouses. Now, collective model that my model is based on the collective model, which is originally given by Chiapuri. As I said earlier, it is an approach to analyze the household behavior that assume that each household member has their own utility function and the decision result in prior to efficient outcome. That means no one can be made better off without making someone else worse off. Now, the model assumes that household with there are the household with 2 working age member, that is a husband defined denoted by F and a wife denoted by M, and the preference of the individual is given by this function, where VI is a twice continuously differentiable strongly concave function, and here QM and QF are the private good consumption vector, and Q0M and Q0F are the individual leisure amount, and the vector of the public good consumption is given by capital Q. Also, this is the full budget construct of the household. It's here the price vector P is given by this, and WI is the wage rate for individual I, and capital II is the personal non-labor income for individual I. Also here IH is the household non-labor income that is not assigned to anyone, and capital T is the total time endowment. Therefore, the budget constraint includes all the household resources that are allocated for consumption and leisure. Now, for this model, Browning et al. Restrict the analysis by assuming that the preference structure is caring. That means the individual utility function is given by this, where you can see that both of the individuals' utility function is enter in this function. Here, the caring utility function allow the possibility that the person has an altruistic utility of other. That means if, for example, if here husbands generate utility from the wife's private consumption, from the fact that this makes, if the private consumption makes his wife happy, he also makes him happy, that because he cares for her. So households solve the allocation problem following a 2-stage allocation procedure. At the top stage, the total family income is allocated to the savings, public good, and each family's chosen private consumption. In the second stage, we identify a sharing rule, which is basically a function that determines how the total income of the household after the first stage expenditure is divided among the household member for the second stage consumption. Now, each partner has a share of the household budget, which is called a resource share. And in the second stage, each member chooses how to allocate their own budget to private good, which are good that only benefit the individual who consume them. And these goods are called assignable good. Now, sharing rule is given by this function, which is rho, which is a function of z and x. Now, x is the total amount of total expenditure that is divided between the spouses at the second stage. And z is the vector of exogenous variable that affect the decision process but do not affect the preferences. These are the extra environmental parameter, which include the bargaining factor that can affect the sharing rule. Now, rho is the share of person M in the total expenditure on a non-public good. So here, like, therefore, this exam, which is basically the private expenditure share of the second stage for the person M, is given by this equation, that is rho multiplied by x. Therefore, xf is equal to 1 minus rho multiplied by x, where rho is between a value 0, 1, 1. And when we take the summation of exam and xf, we should get x, the total amount that was left after first stage consumption. Now, under this following assumption, that is the some goods are non-public and the preferences are caring and each member subutility function is separable with respect to non-public consumption, Browning et al. Says that there will exist a sharing rule. That means we can find an optimum private consumption for M and F, which is given by Q hat M and Q hat M, that solve this optimization problem in the second stage. Now, from here, I extend my model. So for my analysis, I only focus on the heterosexual married couple with children where both the husband and wife work full-time. And as I said earlier, I use M to represent the wife and F to represent the husband. And I assume that childcare expenditure is a private assignable good for wife, and she decides how to allocate it in the second stage based on the sharing rule. Now, I assume there is a one factor zk that entered the vector z, which is given by the income ratio of the wife to the husband, which is Wm by Ws. And Ym and Yf are the variable that directly enter the demand function, but it doesn't enter the sharing rule. So if I have this, then I can express the household demand for goods A by this relationship. Here alpha J is the demand for good J by M, and here beta J is the demand for good J by F, version F. And as I said that XM and XF can be identified with the sharing rule, so I can find this relationship from that. As I already, if QJ is the demand for childcare, which I assume is assignable good for mothers. So in that case, I can drop this beta J function from this relationship if QJ is the childcare demand function. So in that case, we can write that QJ is actually the function of alpha J. And if I want to see that how relative income of wife and husband can affect the childcare demand, I can take the derivative and I find this relationship. As I can see that the relative income can affect the childcare expenditure through two channels. Now, first is how it affect the relative income, how it affect the total expenditure on the non-public good at the second stage. Other way, how it affect the mother's share in the total expenditure. So in this paper, I evaluate how income ratio directly affect the childcare expenditure, but I don't estimate the separate effect of these two factors. Now I'm going to talk about how I use the data to evaluate this relationship. So for my analysis, I use two sources of data. One is a consumer expenditure survey, and the other one is panel study of income dynamic. And for consumer expenditure survey, I use the interview survey data starting from year 2014 to 2021. And for PSID, I use the biennial data 1999 to 2021. And I only consider household with a married couple and their own children, and they have at least the household which have one children under age 12. And in my sample, both husband and wife has full-time work status. Also, to assess the bargaining power of the wife, I calculate the relative income, that is wife income divided by husband income. Also, I collected the data on several other expenditure other than childcare expenditure. Here, I collect data on food at home expenditure, which works as a proxy for additional public goods spending beside childcare that both spouse should care about. And also, I collect the data on food away from home expenditure to understand how the opportunity cost of women time changes with the income level, given the cultural norm that women are mainly responsible for cooking and other household chores. I also gathered data on clothing for girls and boys, and also pets and toys and playground equipment to understand how women differentiate child daycare expenditure from other child-related spending.
Saima, do you have expenditure information on school, either tuition or supplies, potentially even for other kids in the household?
I saw about supplies, but I have to see if I have the tuition. I'm not sure.
Okay.
100%.
Just something else to think about.
Okay. So I separated my income ratio data into 4 quartile and created quartile dummies as explanatory variable, as I wanted to examine how childcare expenditure vary across the different income ratio. So as you can see in the both data set, the third quartile represent the families where wife earn closely or slightly more than husband. And in the fourth quartile, that is the top quartile income ratio, it indicate that mothers are earning substantially higher than their husbands. And for another analysis, I use PSID, where I track the same couple over years. That is, I follow 100 married couple who work full-time and have no kids and aged from 25 to 65. And I track these couple over time until they have their first kid. Then I compare their labor market outcome before and after the first child. I exclude those couple in this process who lose their full-time work status. Also, they got divorced, or if they don't have children, I drop them from my sample. So this is the descriptive statistics for this sample.
Simon, can I ask you a question about that
Yeah.
previous slide?
Sure.
It's Misty. Couples who lose their full-time work status. So is that, when I read that, I'm interpreting that as somebody who got fired or laid off. But do you also exclude people who, like, do you know why they're no longer working full-time?
I have like how many hours they work per week. So from there, I identified if they're working full time or not.
Okay. So I might change lose to, or I might take out lose and put who changed their full-time work status. And then, of course, when you get further on in your talk, somebody's going to ask you, how do you interpret your results given that people who self-select out of work are leaving your sample or excluded from your sample? But anyway.
Okay. So as I was saying, that this is the descriptive statistics for this sample. As you can see, the in these couples, the women and men's weekly work hour pretty much same. And here I have 30% of the women who have high school diploma or equivalent, where in my sample 51% of the men have the high school diploma or equivalent. Also in this couple, around 77% of these women are white, and in men it's 79%. So to see how the family's childcare expenditure is related to relative earning of mothers to the earning of father, I estimate this Welles regression model. Here, epsilon IT is the childcare expenditure for household I at period T. And I run the same regression for spending on the food at home, food away from home, and children's clothing, toys, and related equipment. And here, pi 2i, pi 3i, and pi 4i are the income ratio dummy. If, like for a particular household I, the income ratio for wife and household fall within a first quartile, then for the household, the pi 1i will take the value 1 and 0 for otherwise. Also, I add the control variable. For the control variable, I consider father and mother education level and their race. And I also control for the number of children and the age of children. Also, I control for the total family income, where I include the log of family income IT, which is a log of total income received from salary or wage by the household I at period T. Now, it helps me to extract the impact of the childcare expenditure increase because of the family income increase. Now, I conduct the same analysis for both the consumer expenditure survey data and PSID data sets. Now, for the robustness check, to test whether having more income causes family to spend more on childcare, or whether spending more on childcare allow women to work more and earn more income than their husband, I split the total family income into 3 quartiles and run the income ratio and childcare regression analysis for the top quartile and bottom quartile families. Also, as I said, that I follow the same household over the time using the PSID data set. So I ran this event study analysis where I compare mothers' labor market outcome before and after having their first kid. Here, YIT is the labor market outcome for wives in the household I at time T, which is stand for either income ratio of the wife's earning to husband's earning, or the wife's weekly work hour, or wife's total work hours in a year. Now here, post TK is the dummy variable that indicate if the family I has had their first child K years before or after year T, and and XIT is the control variable for family I in year T, which include father's education, potential experience, race, and mother's education, potential experience, and race. Now I'm going to show explain some results that I have got from the income ratio and childcare expenditure relationship. So this figure shows that the regression estimate for the CES data and the PSID data set. As you can see, the red confidence interval are showing the when I control for the family income, and the blue one are showing that when I don't control for the family income. As you can see, the result shows that there is a significant positive association between relative income of the wife and husband and the childcare expenditure. In particular, childcare expenditure increases when we increase more pronouncedly as we move from the lower quartile to the upper quartile. Here I'm comparing the quartile income ratio with the base category as first income ratio quartile. Now it's the result. If I concentrated on the regression estimate result from the consumer expenditure survey, I have shown the estimate result for families when I control for the family income. As you can see that controlling for other variable and the family income, if I compare to the base income ratio quartile, childcare expenditure increases for the families in the second quartile by around $500, and for the families in the third quartile, it increases by around $900. And as we compare for
So, Saima, question for you.
yes,
So the second quartile, moms are still earning less than dads, right?
yes.
Okay. And those confidence intervals kind of overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So so moms are earning, so in the bottom quartile, they're earning a lot less, correct?
The bottom quarter, yes, yes.
Okay. All right. But they're still working full time, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I just wanted to confirm that.
Is the bottom quartile, what is the value? Is it at 0 because these are all relative to the first quartile? Like, are these values the additional amount of money people are spending relative to the
Yes.
first?
Yes. Compared to the first quartile, the families who are in the second quartile, they're spending $500 more on the childcare.
Okay, so all of these relative to the first quartile are statistically significantly different from the
Yes.
first quartile.
Right. But so like the third and the fourth quartiles.
Yeah.
Third is like they're earning the same, and the fourth is moms are earning more. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
And
So there's really no difference between the third and the fourth quartile. Significant, right? Those are the
Mhm.
same point estimates. You should just be clear about that.
okay.
I mean, you might consider adding the first quartile on here at the top. I know that it'll just be 0, but it'll just make it more obvious that this is a kind of additive comparison, if you will.
Okay.
And I apologize that I can't remember, but how are you controlling, or are you controlling for number of hours worked by each partner per week?
No.
Okay, thanks. That might be something to consider.
But if I'm correct in recalling from the previous slide, the only people in this sample are people working full time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking about variation, like if you had one partner working 50 hours or another one working 40, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sure,
Okay.
valid.
I think that's a good robustness check.
Yes. Yes. Mhm. Thank you.
So you can measure all the ways in which
Mhm.
the male partners over exaggerate the number of hours they work per week.
Oh.
Good one, Misty.
Is somebody taking notes for Saima?
I'm taking
so that
notes.
she doesn't have to. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, this is the estimates for the PSID dataset. So here also I'm comparing the childcare expenditure increase compared to the first quartile income ratio families. So here also I can see that there's a significant increase in the childcare expenditure when I'm moving from the first, compare the childcare expenditure from the first quartile. So as you can see, the families in the second quartile, they increase their there is increase by around $900, and for the third quartile, the childcare expenditure increased by around $800, and for the top quartile, you can see that the childcare expenditure increased by around $1,100. So this suggests that mothers in this quartile who are likely to have a better bargaining position, they contribute significantly more to the family income. They allocate more resources towards childcare expenditure. So when I do the similar analysis for the other type of expenditure, I do not find the same result. I do not see any significant difference on the spending when I move from bottom quartile to top quartile. So as you can see that for these are the expenditure on the 5 different expenditure that I collected data on, and I plot these regression estimates in here. The consumer expenditure survey data does not show any significant difference in this expenditure. In contrast, if I look at the PSID data analysis, here I can only observe food at home and food away home. We can see that for the top quartile, these quartile actually spend around $200 more than the bottom quartile families after controlling for the total family income.
This is a very nice slide.
Quick question. Do you know, regarding your previous results, have you compared them to their actual budget, their expenditure, the percent of what they, they spend, either in just children or overall? Because otherwise it's I don't know how much, $1,000 is to them.
Okay, no, I didn't do that.
Okay. That might be good just to have,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, of looking at the percentage of household income spent on childcare would be another estimate this.
Yeah. So other thing that I wanted to see that if as mothers are more involved in the childcare, like whether the biology affect the women's involvement in the childcare are affecting their labor market outcome. So I look into how the family's income ratio change around their birth when I follow the same couples from the PhD data set over the time and look into how the birth of their first kid affect the income ratio. So this figure is actually shows my event study analysis, which shows that the income ratio between wife and husband shown around the birth of the first child. And this analysis uses all the families in my data set, and this figure does not indicate any significant trend that that happen after and before and after their first kid, birth of their first kid. So because of that, I split the analysis by the top quartile and the bottom 3 quartile of the data set. So this figure plot the income ratio for the top quartile of the families, and this is the right hand side figure plot the income ratio of the bottom 3 quartile. And as you can see, I don't see any observable trend in the bottom quartile of the income ratio. They actually kind of sticky with the time, but however I see a declining trend in the income ratio observed in this bottom 3 quartile. However, they are not statistically significant. So also I look into mothers' work hour around their birth of their children. So as you can see, this figure shows mothers' total hours of work. So it doesn't show any significant pattern. However, there is a sharp decrease in the total hours of work right after the birth. And also when I look into mothers' weekly work hour, there is no clear trend is observed.
Is this using PSID or the?
This is the PSID where I follow
Okay.
the same sample over the time.
Okay.
This result is confirmed by the fixed effort regression analysis, where I look into how other mothers' weekly hours and mothers' total hours of work change, just different after having their kid. As you can see, there is from this column 2, there is no significant change in the mother's weekly hours of work. But when I look into mother's total hours of work, I see that there is it dropped by an average of around 200 hours, which is equivalent to 5 to 6 weeks, mostly due to the maternity leave.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask about that. So this means that they're working fewer weeks, and so they're working the same number of hours when they work, but they're working fewer weeks. Is that right?
They don't work exactly same hours of work, but all of them are working more than 35 hours per week.
Okay.
But Carlos, I think what you're saying is correct. Like,
okay.
Overall, in general, they're kind of averaging out the same weekly hours.
Yeah.
And that the drop in total hours worked appears to be due to weeks off versus
less work when they show up to work, when they actually go to work.
Yep.
Yeah.
So here's the regression result where I compare the childcare and income ratio relationship for the high income family versus low income family. This is the coefficient of the income ratio. You can see that the coefficient of the income ratio quartile are significant for both family income sector. So which means that as the income ratio increases, the childcare expenditure also increases. That means when the wife earn more than their husband, they spend more on the childcare. So if we look at the column 2 for the top quartile of the family, and we look into the column 4 for the bottom quartile of the family, where I control for all the I have controlled for all the variables. So we can see the coefficient of the income ratio are larger in column 2 than column 4. As you can see, the effect of income ratio on childcare expenditure is stronger in the top quartile than in the bottom quartile. That means the higher income families are more responsive to the relative earning of the spouses than the lower income families.
This is another place where it would be good to have the averages to compare the totals.
Mm-hmm.
And is here the is the comma for thousands or for?
This
okay.
is 4,000. Yeah.
The log of family income says 6,000. Is that okay? Never mind.
I mean, that can't either the label's wrong or the values or the.
Yeah, it seems pretty large for a logarithm.
Yep.
So
just check that. Go back.
Yeah, I'll look
and
into
check.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So from my analysis, what I see that when women in the household earn more than their husband, they spend more on childcare. And this relationship differs for the other public good and children-related expenditures such as food, clothing, and toys. And where my sample only considered the full-time individual who have full-time work status, that means both spouses are in my data set are supposed to have a full-time job. So in that case, when women do not earn significantly more than their husband, those families do not spend childcare. This means that they're trying to save money, or they're using the save money with using the informal alternative or cheaper alternative. So this my results support the idea that gender norms play a an important role in division of labor within the household, as childcare society expect men to work more and earn more than their wife. And there is a Pew Research survey data shows that 48% Americans think most men in heterosexual marriages would rather earn more money than their wife. And where 57% of the US adults value what men do at work more than what they do at home. Only 7% say the opposite. So my results exhibit a significant gender deviance neutralization that says that when women earn substantially more than men, it is more necessary for them to outsource their childcare from outside by paying more money or paying for more hours, because they are not willing to give the childcare duties to their husband, or husbands deliberately not taking the responsibilities. Also, there is another.
Hold on. That's kind of a. You are over interpreting the data here. All right. So you're talking about the women, they're paying more for childcare. You know, they're all working full time, so they're all, you know, both spouses are working full time, so they have to buy childcare, right? It's not the men aren't doing their jobs, right? If they're both working full time. So I don't know that when women are earning more, it's necessary to outsource childcare. You know, it could, when you think about childcare, right, they're all purchasing probably the same amount of childcare. They're just spending more for it, which is probably a quality measure. They're purchasing better quality childcare or more expensive childcare if quality and expense are correlated, right? It's not that the dads are not doing their job. So you need to be clear about that. I mean, there is also the case that within the home, and we see this in the time use data, that men aren't doing as much childcare as women, but that's beside the point. Okay.
I mean, the other piece that I might add to just with this comment or this bullet point is I think it's important to be really clear that your results are very specific to households where both individuals are working full time, which means that they're both relatively kind of solidly attached to the labor market, either out of need or want. And that isn't necessarily representative. So the one thing that I was going to say, so I think you need to just be clear about that you know, these results that you're finding aren't necessarily representative of all families or all women or all men, because you're unable to say anything about the families for whom either the mom goes down to part-time or leaves the workforce, and or the dad goes down to part-time or leaves the workforce to juggle informal family care for their kids, right? So you're not saying anything about that. So it's just focused on these people, on kind of these, like in some sense you could sell this as like, you know, these are career-driven families or something like that. I don't know, but so I think it's just important to be clear about that. And then the next comment I was going to say to you, which you might get to at a later slide, but just if I were you, I would rerun your entire analysis, not restricting to this full-time year-round, and just see what happens. And it's not something you have to put in your paper. It's not something you necessarily have to like present on, but somebody will ask you, like, what does this mean for the broader the larger set of families, or what does this mean for women who aren't as attached to the labor force? And you should be able to at least say like, well, I ran this result this way. You know, I ran this result with, you know, allowing women to exit or go down to 0 hours worked or 0 income. And, you know, here's what I found.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So there is another way to talk about it, that how social norm contribute more to making childcare a private expenditure for mother, as the experience what psychology literature called mother guilt, and the social expectation pressure women to feel guilty about delegating the childcare pressure. So they tend to buy more childcare when they have more the control over more resources in the family. Also, there is a study by Anderson and Nix. They see that women's income fall 22% after first child in heterosexual couple and persist over a long time, when in the same-sex couple, this drop is about 13%, but it recover in 2 years. So in that case, it shows that how my even study analysis actually support this illustration that says that how gender norm account for the most of the relative child penalty faced by the heterosexual couple in United States, because as in the top quartile of income ratio does not get affected by having kid, that means that this excess childcare pressure is heavily induced by gender norm, not biology. So to summarize my analysis, that I have developed a household bargaining model based on the model by Browning, Bourguignon, Chiapuri, and Leighton, and I tested it with the data with the Consumer Expenditure Survey and PSID. And my model assumed that childcare service is a private good for mother, and that they will demand more of it if they have a better bargaining position within the family. And this implies that mothers who earn more than their husband are more willing to spend on quality childcare, where mothers who earn less than their husband are more likely to sacrifice their own time or going for less expensive childcare or informal service to take care of their children. And my result analysis advocate the fact that gender norm influence the household behavior by imposing the childcare burden mainly on mothers. So, So one interesting direction for my future research is to extend this study to other countries, especially those with more egalitarian gender norm and subsidized childcare policies, such as Nordic country. And I'd like to explore whether the argument that childcare is a private good for mother hold in more gender equal societies, or whether it is influenced by social or cultural factor. So believe that this would be a valuable contribution to the literature on the household economy and gender inequality. So thank you for attention, and I look forward to your question and comments.
Thank you so much. Great presentation. Any opening it up now for questions from the audience?
So I have a question and a comment. So what I understood from your data was that you use a sample of households that have children younger than 12 years of age. Is that correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
You use a sample of families who have children younger than 12 years of age.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes. So my question is why? So one of the papers that you cited was by Chris Herbst about childcare. I think you cited either the one on the business cycle or just about the childcare market published by JPAM in 2023. But whenever we think about childcare costs, we typically think about 0 to 5 years of age. So I was wondering, and during that period of time is when there are more expenses on childcare. So I was wondering, first of all, why you decided to focus on 0 to 12. And also maybe just having the subgroup of 0 to 5 might be really interesting, because that is the period of time when most childcare actually happens.
I took families with children less than 12 years old because I think that the children who are above 12 years old, they are the children that are less than 12 years old, they are more prone to, they need the childcare more than the student above 12 years, because teenager can take care of themselves better than the children less than 12 years old. As the children less than 12 years old, they still go to school, but I think that they still need someone to take care of them. And they need the childcare services?
Well, I think that Irma makes a really good point that you should, as a robustness check, look at 0 to 5, because that's really where the expense hits. Yeah, I think it will just strengthen your results if you look only at 0 to 5.
Okay.
So that's something you should do as a robustness check, if not.
Also, I doubt anybody in your savvy audience of job market talks will say anything about this, but it's really a false perception that under 12 need care and over 12 do, especially in the US today. If you have children who are no longer of driving age, they are very disruptive in career life and patterns, not to mention the emotional needs that they often require are somewhat intense. So that might be even more reason to do 5 and under or some other framework, but anyway.
That's true. And another thing, just for your information, it is perfectly legal to leave a child 6 years old or older by themselves in the state of Kansas.
Oh.
The youngest age in the country in terms of being allowed to leave a child by itself.
And that there's lots of variation by state by state. So other questions?
I think in the beginning you mentioned in your bibliography, you mentioned a paper by Bertrand in 2010. Is that the one with Claudia Goldin and Lawrence Katz on the dynamics of the gender gap for young professionals? Because if not, I'm just going to put the link because it resonates with what you're researching and some of the conclusions, I think. I think you might find it interesting. Anyways.
Thank you so much.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a new paper. So thank you for adding that, Carlos.
Okay,
it's that and
I mean, I don't know if this is going to matter but so you have a theoretical model in the beginning. It would be nice to see, where you've made contributions, sort of to see it in, where does this show up in what you're estimating? Because right now, the way it's presented, I felt it's separated. I don't know which part of, your contributions, that you presented theoretically, how they show up in the regressions, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but
I mean, along those same lines, I would say there's a fine balance between, like when you first started presenting the mathematical models, I was like, oh, we're going to lose a bunch of people in this talk who aren't like economists who, speak in math. But then I was like, no, but okay, this is good. And then I was like, oh, yes. So I remember all of this. But then I started feeling like, is it too abstract or too redundant? So I just think like for a job market talk, like your goal is you want to demonstrate mastery of the material. So I think you have to cover those models, but just make sure you're really judicious and like make sure that you have eliminated all redundancy, make sure that, you don't spend a lot of time going over, because your audience will be familiar, I think, with, well, I guess that depends on the department. Donna doesn't agree, but
well, I mean, if they knew the economics of the family, they'll be familiar. But
yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about myself. So yeah, so just fine balance, but just make sure you've eliminated all redundancy or any, you want to get through that stuff as fast as you can while still demonstrating that you are a master of it. And then get to the fun stuff, which is your empirical analysis.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that these models are complicated. So they don't, it's not easy to just present a simple, 400-foot view.
You know, one thing that I've seen people do in talks is like have, you know, this is when people use the fancy version of whatever the PowerPoint options are, the in LaTeX,
Prezi?
but people will, yeah, people will have like links and they'll say like, I'm happy to walk you through the details of this model if you're interested. And I have it here and I can do that and then kind of move forward. And then if somebody asks you to demonstrate it for them, then you go back and you do that. So that's another potential something to think about. All right, just in respect for everyone's time, any other last questions or thoughts or comments for Saima to just kind of round off her talk and send her on her way into the ethos of finding a job?
Thank you. Good luck.
All right, well, thank you so much. This has been a really great talk, Saima, and I wish you the best of luck
Thank you so much.
on the job market.
Thank you for everybody for the comments. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good luck.
Thank you.